The term perspective can refer to a person's point of view, outlook, or interpretation. In this sense, it's about how we perceive and understand the world around us based on our experiences and beliefs. In terms of art, the word perspective refers to the techniques artists use to create the illusion of depth, three-dimensional spaces on a two-dimensional surface. If perspective didn't exist, everything would appear to be flat and we'd struggle to represent space and form. So both in art and in a general sense, perspective involves ways of seeing and understanding.
And there's nothing more satisfying than understanding something.
If you're watching this video and you understand very little about perspective, then do not worry, because the purpose of this series is to explain all there is to know on the subject.
Who the devil are you?
My name is Dan, and I've been making videos on perspective drawing for many years now, and it used to be just me. That was until Boxman came along. Boxman is a complete beginner who is also looking to learn. He doesn't talk much, although the same can't be said for his sister.
I want to learn perspective too, but it just seems complicated?
Many artists assume that perspective is too technical and confusing. However, it doesn't have to be. We'll approach it one step at a time, starting with the basics and progressing from there. Perspective is easy, yet surprisingly, few artists are familiar with the simple laws that make it so. That's a quote from this book, Perspective Made Easy, by Ernest Norling. I actually have a video on the channel in which I review this book. Anyways, these simple laws were discovered a long time ago, studied by artists who throughout the generations have passed down their knowledge. And it's hard to imagine a time when artists had no concept of perspective. Their artwork would often look flat and be lacking in depth. You can see how they made an attempt to create realistic spaces, but, well, they would struggle to do that. Looking at the ceiling in this room here, if we extend these lines, you can see how they fail to meet at the same vanishing point. And you've probably noticed this table already, how it appears to be tilting forwards. It wasn't until around the year 1415 when a man named Filippo Brunelleschi came along and decided to conduct an experiment, one which would lead to the discovery of linear perspective. This famous experiment involved using mirrors to sketch the Florence Baptistry in perfect perspective. Realizing that all parallel lines would converge to a single point, he was able to mathematically calculate the scale of objects within a painting in order to make them appear more realistic. And so, from that point on, no pun intended, this method was studied and applied by many other artists and architects. They investigated the question of how to draw three-dimensional objects on flat surfaces. A good example is from Leonardo da Vinci. Wait, Boxman, you've got the wrong guy. There we go. Anyways, he said this. Perspective is nothing else than seeing a place or objects behind a plane of glass, quite transparent, on the surface of which the objects behind the glass are to be drawn. So the window is like your piece of paper, but don't go drawing on windows. Thanks to this understanding of perspective, artists could now produce convincing scenes in their artwork. And if we fast forward centuries later to the present day, perspective has now become part and parcel of art and design. We also have the convenience of computers, which we are relying on more and more as tools to create art.
I'm learning!
Many artists work in 3D modelling programs which deals with perspective for you. Like, this is probably the reason why the subject is sometimes overlooked, but a lot of artists still continue to draw on a two-dimensional surface, whether that's traditionally on paper or digitally on a drawing tablet, and so they are still required to understand perspective to confidently create the illusion of a three-dimensional space. Also, producing a 3D model as a means of planning out your drawings in perspective can be very useful. In fact, that's what I do for each of my drawing tutorials on Patreon. I create this basic form and also provide a perspective grid, which is a great starting point for any beginner. So there's a lot of tools and resources out there which can be a great help. There's also a lot of books that I'll be referencing along the way. Now this is a beginner's guide, so we won't be getting too technical, but it goes without saying that having even just a general understanding of perspective will make a big difference. You'll be able to produce better artwork. It's a great subject to study and also a good starting point for new aspiring artists. It can seem overly complex at times, but it's like learning anything. You have to take it one step at a time. I'm not gonna lie, there is a long road ahead of us, but that's why I'm here, to show you the way. So come on, Boxman, let's go learn about drawing in perspective. Oh, and before I forget, the drawing that you've just seen me create is something that I had drawn for a tutorial on Patreon. With each of these episodes, I'm going to try and create a bonus video for there, so check that out if you're interested. You know, these videos take a long time for me to make, but I'm very excited to be working on a new series like this, and I hope you are looking forward to it too. As always, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.